I'm just making this video as a response to my good friend Kellen, who was kind enough to leave a very nice comment on my recent video. No, I'm not going to pretend like he's some stranger on the internet providing me feedback. It is my good friend, but I do want to give a honest response and one that I think will benefit a lot of people. I think this is a common sentiment, a common issue people are running into at the moment, as many people are stuck in a place of confusion, right? There's a lot of dogma in the fitness industry right now and in the pain and rehab side of things, as people are trying to figure out what is optimal, what is the absolute best form of training, what is the most effective way to manage pain. Are they being lied to from other sources? Are they being lied to from their current PT? There's a lot of uncertainty right now. And this stems from, honestly, a lot of the clickbait garbage that's going around. So in this new digital age where it's easy to get caught up in information overload, it's important that we really just take a step back, we zoom out a bit, and we realize it's not about focusing on the protocols or the movement systems itself, but it's important to focus on the principles, right? The basic principles are there, and they're usually shared amongst these different movement systems. So I think the principles on both sides can really be simplified, and we can take the principle from each movement system and apply it to our own training to come up with our best well-rounded approach. So for example, we can take something like the expansion compression model or PRI model, which have a lot of overlap, and only take the key principles and ideas from those and apply those in a very practical way to our own training. So rather than going on a full deep dive into PRI and how the expansion compression model would change our training as a whole, we find the most important pieces and we implement it in our own system. So just for an example, if you are somebody who enjoys a style of training that is more into bodybuilding and maybe some powerlifting, we don't want to ditch that training style completely just because we began to learn about the expansion compression model and how the rib cage ties into everything. Instead, you want to take the most important factors of the rib cage and how that can apply to your preferred style of training and use that as a way to progress. So people often get caught in the trap of complexity. The more caught up you get in complexity, the more likely you are to end up feeling like you're chasing every new tip, trying to look for ways to constantly improve without putting in really the effort required. So we end up losing sight of our original goals, our original path. We stray further and further away as we get distracted from these new novel ideas, rather than taking the bits and pieces from these new novel ideas and applying the most important details to our training as an add-on, not as a complete reframing or switch to our style of training. So simplicity done well over time with consistency is always going to beat someone who is very well read and complex in their strategy, but end up not putting in as much consistent work because they're still trying to create the perfect formula. The person who showed up every day and did what was considered suboptimal is likely going to yield better results. And I don't think this extends to only hypertrophy. I think this goes into strength and performance, and may I dare say, even into pain management. Simply put, simplicity done well over time beats perfect plans that are never followed. So how can we, as Kellen says, bring a more balanced, unbiased approach into an everyday person's training? He feels like he wants to follow all the advice he sees on the internet, but he doesn't quite have the time. So what should he do? Well, he should first find a style of training that really resonates with him, without losing sight of the most important things that are going to encompass every movement system, which is some form of graded exposure, while also emphasizing proper recovery. So if you implement those two things, it almost won't matter which exact system you use or model system you choose to follow, you're going to yield some great results. Now, if you find you're not getting results and you are trying to implement graded exposure, progressively overloading appropriately, and getting enough ample recovery, then it's time to look into some other options, other solutions. And that's where I think some people make the mistake of program hopping. So they'll say, oh, this program didn't work for me. Now let me try a new one. They give it maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks, they've already given up because they haven't seen the results in an instant. We live in a kind of instant gratification world right now, where if anything takes longer than 3 weeks, especially for training, it's not going to cut it. Realistically, you need to stick it out for at least 3 months before you can make or come to the conclusion that it's not the best fit for you. It's always going to be a focus on principles, not protocols. The protocols are so heavily debated and so nuanced that shouldn't be our main focus. If I find great value and enjoyment out of doing an ATG style program, which by the way does have heavy emphasis on graded exposure and recovery, well, that's what I'm going to be doing, despite what a lot of the research might say, coming out and saying that there is no benefit to going to full knee flexion for something like an ATG split squat. I think it's all contextual. Now, like Kellen said, we're talking about for the everyday person's training. I think this makes it a lot easier to take this approach, right? If we're talking about elite athletes, in the top of the top, this is where, yes, it is important to maybe pay more mind to these more advanced techniques and really try to optimize our training. If you're an elite athlete, you should be paying somebody anyways, a very well-respected coach, to guide you along that path. The average typical person, we are vastly missing out on a lot of the benefit of simply applying a graded exposure approach with enough patience. We can't expect to get the results we desire unless we're getting ample sleep, unless we're moving enough periodically throughout the day, if we're not hydrated, if we're chronically stressed out. There's just so many factors that go into our recovery. And if we don't first check off those boxes first and take on a proper gradual approach, it won't matter how much you've perfected your program or how much research you've done. Your paralysis by analysis, you can call it, will ultimately lead to no results. So simply, we want to lift consistently, move in varied ways, prioritize what makes you feel strong, right? That's an important aspect, is what gives you intrinsic motivation and value. I'm somebody who's naturally strong and competed in powerlifting. Therefore, I enjoy still taking that strength approach in my training. We don't want to get caught up in that mindset of needing constant fixing, especially if we're depending on somebody else to do it for us. We want to be able to take matters into our own hands, and oftentimes that can be a lot simpler than the people on YouTube want you to think. So if you find yourself struggling with your training and getting caught up in all the complexities, reach out to me on Instagram at Nuanced Strength, and I'd be more than happy to help. We can take a look at your program and tailor a program more specific to your needs without getting too caught up in all the specifics. So no, I'm not just trying to sell some cookie cutter program here or some brand new movement system. I'm simply looking to help people take actionable steps in a way that's tailored towards their needs. And doing so is going to require some nuance. Strength.